In this video, we're going to show you how to install the master cylinder on your Honda Ridgeline located underneath your hood. So here we have our master cylinder set up and prepared to do our bench bleeding. Now we have one of the ears locked up in our vise. Now we didn't make this super tight because we don't want to break the ear on our unit itself. So it's just held in there snugly. Now we also have some hoses here that run up from the port up inside for the bleeding process. In order to get the hoses in there, we had to remove the screen from inside and obviously remove our cap, turning counterclockwise, pop that off. Now we filled the fluid to the seam right here, and while we're holding the hoses down inside the fluid level, I'm going to use the handle of a screwdriver, or you can use a wooden dowel or something. You need to operate the piston on the other side in and out, purging any air out of the unit itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, cycle it a few times, and you can see the air going through the lines. We need to continuously do this until all of that air or those bubbles are gone. And if you find it necessary to go ahead and add more fluid to it, you can go ahead and do so. And at this point here, we have solid fluid going through. No air bubbles, which is perfect. And at this point, what we can do, we want to go ahead and secure this for now. We want to install our screen and put our cap on this here. We just don't want to introduce any air back into the system here. Here we go. Now with this secured, we can go ahead and set these up here. We're going to go ahead and move over to the vehicle, and we're going to remove the old master cylinder and transfer this one in place. Now with the hood open, you want to go ahead and remove the upper engine cover. Now normally there are retainers across the front side of the cover itself. Ours is missing, so we're gently going to lift up on this here, remove it and set it aside. On our air intake tube, we want to go ahead and loosen up this clamp right here. It's a 10 millimeter. We're going to loosen it. We're not going to undo the clamp. Now, if you follow the hose up to the air box itself, there are going to be a few Phillips head screws or 8 millimeter screws holding the lid on here. So we want to go ahead and loosen and remove those next. And on the back side here of our air intake tube, there is a hose coming around to the back, and there is a clamp here. So we're going to use a pair of pliers and pinch that clamp and release that. work that metal hose out of the intake port here. There it is. And lift up on that and pull that out and set it aside. Now that we have access to everything right here on our master cylinder, we're going to go ahead and clean off this unit using some spray solvent. I want to go ahead and wipe down, get rid of any dirt and debris that might be around the top itself. Our next step is, if you have a container like this here, it's simply a half of a bottle that we had. We're just going to set that up. Now, remove our cap, twisting that counterclockwise. I'm going to go ahead and just wrap that right there. I don't want to get brake fluid all over the place. Inside here is a screen. And if you can see in there, there's a lot of dirty fluid in here. This has not been serviced in a long time. Let's go ahead and set this aside. Next thing we're going to do is grab this tool here. Now we're going to suck the fluid out of this here. You can use anything from like a turkey baster or something like that. Something that's going to create a good vacuum to go ahead and pull out as much of this fluid as possible. And that's what we're using our half a bottle there for. Now our goal here is to really just clean this out, so when we bleed our brakes, we're pulling in fresh clean fluid and cycling that through and getting rid of all the old garbage, instead of wasting our time running dirty fluid right through the system again. Our next step, add clean fluid to this. And depending on how much fluid you have, you can repeat this process again. Adding that new fluid is going to go ahead and get that old garbage and some debris floating around again. So you want to go ahead and you can still see some old garbage coming out of that, which is good. At this point, we're going to grab our container and go ahead and dispose of that properly. Let's go ahead and disconnect our cap electrical here. They're just little bullet connectors there. So remove that cap, set that aside. Now what we're going to do is use our open end wrench, and we're going to break these two lines free. All right, now that those two are free, you can use shop rags or towels. And I'm just going to put some mats underneath, because when we remove the master cylinder, we are going to lose some fluid. And I try to prevent that from leaking everywhere. It's just a good practice to do something like that. Try to prevent that brake fluid from getting everywhere, because it is corrosive to paint. And just Just makes for an easier cleanup in the end anyways. Okay, now that we have these two hard lines loose, we're going to go ahead and crack the two nuts loose on the booster itself. Using a 13mm socket and an extension to get in there. I'm going to come back to our hard lines here, and let's go ahead and loosen these. Just continue to do that until we can get both of these fittings and hard lines released. Okay, now that we have both lines released, I'm going to go ahead and remove the two nuts on the booster. Now when you pull this off, you're going to pull it straight towards the front of the vehicle, and as you come out, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it a little bit so that we can try and keep some of that fluid, any residual fluid in there. We don't want to drip this on the fender or anything like that on the vehicle. I'm going to put a towel underneath to catch that, and then bring that up and remove it. Now our next step is we want to clean up the face of the booster here itself, make sure that our surface is going to be clean. Before I use my little bristle brush on there, I am going to plug that hole here. I'm going to try and minimize debris going inside the booster. I'm just going to use my bristle brush and clean that surface. Now, with the new booster, it's going to come with an O-ring seal that is going to help seal the master cylinder up to the booster itself. So the key thing is making sure that right around this flange here is clean, and obviously the mating surface, you want it to seat evenly all the way around. And give that a quick spray with some solvent. Do not get it inside your brake lines here. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and remove our mats. For the most part, all of the major dripping is done. So get that out of the way and discard that properly. I'm going to take our new master here. You want to make sure that the rubber O-ring seal is in place between the flange and the input area here. After we bled our system here on the bench, we went ahead and installed the little rubber caps here. That's going to help prevent a lot of that fluid from dribbling back out again. So we're going to go ahead and insert the shaft right here, and that goes dead center right in the middle, so you want to be careful when installing this. Make sure that that goes in properly. You can feel it line up. And it'll line up nice and easy onto the studs. Install the nuts. Always start those by hand. Never use a power tool to get these started. Okay, once you get those started, I'm going to go ahead and run those nuts down. Now you do not want to over tighten this. You can distort the vacuum booster face itself. So just bottom these out gently. And then we'll torque those down later on. Our next step is to install those hard lines. Now if you want, you can go ahead and throw a couple towels underneath here. Probably going to lose a little bit of fluid there. I'm going to start with the back one. I'm going to pull that rubber cap. I'm removing this upper nut on the right hand side. You may have to remove the lower one as well. Normally these will fit right on, but when working on vehicles, you can never assume anything that is going to fit together perfect right away. So if you have to pop this off, then get the hard lines lined up. You really need to focus on that. That is the key thing. There we go. We'll get that back line in. Line that back up. I'm going to pull the rubber cap out of the front. Get that front line installed. Now as I'm doing this, I'm just kind of manipulating the master around, but I'm making sure that the push rod or the shaft itself is lining up on the inside. And that's how we had to do it. We had to get the hard line started before we bolted that down. Now what we're going to simply do is get this lined up onto the studs. go. Okay, let's go ahead and snug down these lines. All right, once that nut bottoms out, you want to give it a little bit more. Make sure it's good and snug, but don't over tighten it, as you can crack the booster, or you can crack the master cylinder actually, not the booster. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this mat and I'm going to go ahead and spray this down with some solvent to get rid of any of that brake fluid that's been dribbling out of there. I'm going to torque down the nuts from the master cylinder to the booster. Those are 18 foot-pounds. The hard lines themselves are torqued to 26 foot-pounds. Once those are torqued, let's go ahead and install or reconnect the electrical connectors. Simply line those up, push those together. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and top off our master cylinder. We're actually going to overfill this a little bit because the next step we need to do is proceed to our brake bleeding procedure. Seal that up. Now, before we install all of our air intake tube and air lid box and everything, we're going to keep that off until we complete our brake bleeding procedure. That just makes it easier for us to go ahead and pull this off and top off our fluid as necessary. Once all that procedure is done, then we'll finish up by installing the air intake tube and lid. We'll just top off our fluid. Go ahead and grab your cap, line that up. and secure that. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and start to bleed our brakes. Now we have someone up inside the vehicle, and what they're going to do is help us pump up the brakes and hold pressure while we go ahead and open up the bleeder screw. Now we're going to do this 4 times. We're going to start with the left front, then over to the right front, right rear, and then we're going to finish up at the left rear. And what we're going to do is use a 10mm wrench to go ahead and open up that bleeder screw. We have a canister here to catch the fluid as we do this. So we're going to go ahead and have the person up in the driver's seat go ahead and pump up the brakes. Usually that's 3 to 5 times, and then hold constant pressure. I'm going to put this on here and use our wrench. And while they're holding pressure, we're just going to crack this, and we're going to watch the fluid come down the line. And what we're looking for is any air bubbles that might be in there. All right. And go ahead and pump it up. Now normally the gentleman or person in that seat there will let us know when that pedal hits the floor, so we know when we can go ahead and close up that bleeder screw. I'm going to open that up, and he's at the floor. Go ahead. And we can see that we're getting good solid stream of fluid with no more air bubbles. We're going to do one more time. And there it is. So we'll go ahead and remove this here. Now, if you have any residual fluid leaking out of this, simply go ahead and take a spray solvent, give it a quick spray, wipe that down. In some cases, you'll have a rubber boot that was on the bleeder screw. Ours are missing, but if you have that rubber boot, just go ahead and pop that back on. Let's go ahead and do this process on the right front. Let's go ahead and top off your fluid. We're going to fill this up to the max line right on the side of the reservoir. Now that we've topped off our master cylinder, let's go ahead and continue on to the right rear, or the passenger side rear. Okay, go ahead and pump it up. Okay. Now you can see we have some air in the line right here. And again. Now the other thing you're also looking for is clarity of that fluid. You want clear fluid coming through this here. If you have brownish looking fluid, keep on flushing this. Even though there's no more air bubbles, you want to get rid of that old contaminated fluid until you have that new clean stuff coming through. Go ahead and pump it up. And we'll do one more. Okay, make sure that's good and snug. Give it a quick spray. If you have that rubber boot, go ahead and pop that onto that bleeder screw. Now we're going to go ahead and finish up with the driver's side rear. Let's go ahead and top off your fluid. We're going to fill this up to the max line right on the side of the reservoir. Let's go ahead and get our air intake tube lined up here. Put our air box lid or air filter lid down into place. Now on the air intake tube where it goes onto the throttle body, don't forget we have this hard line here that needs to go into place. Sometimes by giving the metal line or the inside of the rubber port a quick spray of spray solvent, that might help that slide onto that hose a little bit better, a little easier. You can use your pliers to go ahead and move that hose clamp into position. We can go ahead and secure our intake tube clamp here. And you just want to make that snug. You don't want to over tighten it where you break the clamp. Give it a little wiggle, make sure that's on there secure. Now let's come back up to the air filter lid. Line that up, make sure that is sealed up. And we're going to use our extension here to go ahead and get all of these screws started. Then we can go ahead and snug these down. Be gentle with these here as you can break the screws or the box itself. So you just want them to be bottomed out. And take the engine cover, now the two plastic pins that will line up. Push those down and then install your retainers on the front side of the engine cover itself.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.